just start recording and see what magic pops up there. Hey, Mick.
Hey, Davey.
How's it going?
Everything's audiorific in my world. How are you doing?
I'm good, and it's David, not Davey.
Oh.
Not 6. How are things going? All good?
Yeah, good. I've been listening to a lot of new music and been busy. I've been reconstituting some of my surround system because I have the two main. I have the 2.1 and then I have a 5.1.
Okay.
And I've been having a lot of fun with that and tweaking that a little bit. So just as usual, kind of just always tweaking and listening to new music.
Ah, that's great. That's great, man. Yeah, just last night I listened to the half-speed master of the Who's Next.
Nice.
Yeah, that was on vinyl. That was a treat.
You know, I just ordered the Atmos Blu-ray audio of that.
Oh, my
See, here we go again.
Yeah.
Analog, digital. Here we go. The divide that sits between us.
It's not that much of a divide as it is a chasm, I would say.
But you see, I can prove analog is more uptight than digital because, like, if you were digital, you wouldn't mind being called Davey.
That is true.
But David, you know, it's a little more formal, it's a little more stiff. You got a little more dust in your grooves. You know, you just got to be, you know, you got to clean that dust out, man.
Yes, it's David. Thank you.
Well, I'm still Mick.
Yes. I was talking to my daughter earlier, and she, longtime iPhone user, and out of the blue, she asked me, well, if I were to get a home stereo, Dad, what should I get? Yeah. What should I get? I mean, she's, you know, she's a Gen Zer. And I'm like, huh? You know, and there was a sort of tapestry of emotion of like utter shock and, you know, elation because, yeah, it's like, you know, she's recognizing that the current equipment that she has is limited. And she does want to be able to kind of share the music that she listens to. And so, yeah, you know, I was like, absolutely. Let's find time to talk. So we haven't had the discussion yet. We haven't had the talk yet. But it did get me thinking about, you know, well, you know, do I lead her down the dark analog path or the bright and shiny digital path?
Right.
Well, you know, there are advantages to both. And so, yeah, so it really got me thinking that I really should look into a beginner system for her, but also maybe I can repurpose some of the older equipment that I have for her. What are your thoughts about either a new system or possibly like upgrading an existing system, you know, for people who are, you know, new?
Yeah, well, it is something I get asked a lot, actually. I've had a lot of people at various jobs and people I know socially and around who have asked me that very question. And it's like an awesome question to be asked, like you sort of express, but it's also like, it's sort of like saying, you know, like, what house should I buy?
Right,
or like,
right,
what car should I drive? Like, geez, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
are you hauling bricks or are you just trying to like evade the police? You know, what are you using the car for? Is it a getaway car? Is it a utility vehicle?
Yeah.
So I take a little bit of that approach. I said before, it's having worked in the music industry and stuff, in audio industry, I just feel very utilitarian. It's sort of like sometimes my JBL Flip is like the best thing I've ever heard, you know, when I'm out in the garden because it works great.
Yeah.
It sounds great. And I think a lot of times we forget, especially for the beginner, that there should be like this is something that Apple understood so well. There should be a kind of like, you should kind of love what you have, like the gear, like aesthetics are really important.
Sure. Yeah.
And everyone says, oh, just the sound is the thing. And, you know, I've heard people recommend these big sort of boxy, I think hideously ugly speakers and stuff. And they're like, oh, but it's all about the sound. I'm like, not really. Like if that was sitting in my living room, like I'd be miserable. Like, I don't know. It's not. Like there are plenty of amazing sounding components that don't look like butt, you know, like that you can just. So I'm very much on aesthetics. And then with form following function, you have to say, get down to the use case.
Yeah.
You know, how do you like to listen? Where do you like to listen? What do you envision? Is it like for a desktop for where you're working in your computer and this and that? That sets up a whole different thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Or you have a little, she's just moved, I know. You said you just moved out in the Chicago area, I think. So And then it's sort of like the setup, like where does she envision, just like where does she love to listen to music, or how?
All of those variables are absolutely essential to choosing a system. Unfortunately, I have like no answers for her because, yeah, I mean, she's in a tiny apartment. It's just her and a boyfriend, and a cat. I'm gonna guess I would lean towards like a desktop system. So, small bookshelf speakers, maybe a DAC integrated amplifier combo. I think that's something that would be a good, starter system. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure what she wants to do with it, but it is apparent that she wants to be able to listen without the confines of headphones.
Yeah, no, I understand it. And like actually with my family, my wife and son, I changed some of my system up to accommodate them, because I realized like I was the only one who was going in. I had Krell stack for a while, and then I had, my benchmark DAC, and I had, a lot of really, really nice gear. I was running some nice Focal speakers that I really liked, but I was the only one enjoying it. And I would encourage them to say, look, it's really easy. You just turn this on, then you turn this on, then you wait for it to click and wait for the
What aren't you following?
the limit light. Then you go in here, but now you have to go into this app because you need, like, and I just found like they were never listening to it. They were happy I had such a nice hobby and everything.
Mhm.
So I actually started gearing everything for user friendliness for them.
Okay.
And the good news is it worked great. I mean, I
Mhm.
still have my Krell amp. You'll have to pry it out of my cold dead hands. I'm going to be buried with that amp. And,
He could be buried in that amp.
and, but now it's like they just know, like they can just go in. We're all iPhone now, and they can just go in and like AirPlay it right. Boom, it's right there. The
Yeah.
NAD. I'm running NAD right now. The M10 V2. Just a really simple little black box.
Yeah.
I just love it because it's mainly because of its user friendliness, and those newer HypeX amps are just fantastic. I think they've really
Yeah.
come
What
of
is, what
age.
is, what is, what is HypeX?
HypeX is a type of amplifier sort of topology. It's a class D, which really didn't have great reputation. Like they'd use them maybe in like cheaper subwoofers or this or that. There were certain uses for it. You can have 100 watts per channel,
Mhm.
which, in the old days used to be a big, hot, heavy box.
Right,
You'd
yeah.
have to. This runs maybe a little warm to the touch.
Mhm.
It cranks. It's got 100 watts per channel. It's incredibly clean.
Mhm.
And most importantly, I am very critical about the sound, but I actually sold off several Class D amps of earlier
Mm.
HypeX versions.
Okay.
And there was nothing wrong with them. At the time, they were absolutely beautifully made. They were
Mm-hmm.
independent. They were little, makers here and there, one guy from the UK. But I mean, I sold them and sort of moved them on because, it just wasn't working for me.
I gotcha.
And when I auditioned the new NED with the new HypeX modules, I was pretty blown away. I said, okay, look, this is good enough. I can
Mhm.
live with this, and it's super user friendly, and it looks sexy, and it's unobtrusive.
Right.
So I kind of went that way. For your daughter, nowadays there's just a ton of really nice. We've talked about Wim before.
Yep.
They're kind of taking the world by storm.
Yeah, I've got a Wim Pro Plus.
And I think it's because they've it's affordable.
Yeah.
It works great. It's app based. Those things that just make it like, oh, here's my music. Click.
Yeah.
That's what Steve Jobs understood with the iPod.
Mhm.
Fun fact, I was about the first 100 people in New York City to get an iPod.
Oh, yeah?
I actually went down. There was no Apple stores, so I went to like the local computer
Tech
city
store?
or whatever it was, CompUSA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and put myself on the waiting list, and they were limited for the stores that you could get around. They had a very limited waiting list.
Mhm.
I think they had like 50 or something, or 25 each store. It was some limited number, and I got right in on that first batch.
I see.
I still have it, so it's someday I'm gonna like try to compare that serial number and see what number I actually.
Yeah, there you go.
But
Might be worth something.
but he knew. It's like you turn it on, you see it. Oh, songs. Here we go. By artist, album. Great. I click in that little Chicago font, and like, and you go down there with the gray screen and everything, and then you plug it in, and oh, this iTunes thing just pops up. It recognizes it. I instantly can sync things over. I can drag and drop. I can get my music in. Then they added in the iTunes store to which I thought the first iteration was so brilliant because they built in a browser that they built in with e-commerce.
Okay.
And it was
Yeah.
really one of the first, I think, super successful, like dedicated e-commerce apps
Mm-hmm.
slash browsers, and now, I mean, it was a shame that they let it go because it's among the worst pieces of software now ever devised. But when it came out, it was really something else. It was revolutionary, like the product. But that's what they get. He got simplicity, intuitiveness, ease of use, and get people closer connected to their music.
Yeah, which is sort of ironic, I would say, because Steve he didn't invent the MP3, the personal MP3 player. He just improved it. He streamlined it.
Right.
He monetized it, and in my opinion, he made music instantly accessible, which is good. Made it much more convenient, but frankly, at the cost of quality,
Right.
which puts a little gravel in my goose, as they say, because he was an audiophile. Back in the day, he was an audiophile. He had a Lynn Sondek turntable. He had a Spectral Stasis 1 power amp, FET 1 preamp. What was it? The Denon tuner. The
Yeah.
guy loved music, clearly. I don't know. Maybe he just saw the expense and inconvenience of a very large system and said, well, now is the time to shrink this thing down and stick it in your ears. And probably decided that, what, it sounds good enough. And, good enough is, commercially viable. Yeah, I have this kind of love-hate relationship with Apple.
Well, they also had, right, but it was also like the age of Napster
yeah.
and stuff like that. So like music was just being downloaded. So like the demand was there,
Yeah.
and the process of going to a site and then searching and then downloading this stuff, it was already kind of there. He tried to monetize it, but also legalize it because the record companies were aghast.
Yeah.
Like you want to like make digital versions of this music that people can hold and take with them, and like they just so didn't get it. And he fought and fought and fought. I wouldn't be surprised. I think the lower resolution thing, it was what, 120 AAC or MP3 versus NA, horrible AAC, like 120 kbps or something. It was just awful. But he also knew, like, it wasn't CD quality. So it wasn't like they were getting a rip of the full high-res version. Servers back then, we're coming up on 25 years. It's 23 years. It was November of 2001, I believe, was the launch.
Yeah.
But he figured that out, and he made compromises, no doubt. But I was all in on that. I was so excited, man. I wore that thing out,
Yeah. So back to my daughter. She does have this kind of keen interest, and we're going to be talking to her and see what's out there. But yeah, most likely it'll probably start off with like some sort of WIM type device, some sort of integrated amp DAC thing, just because it is convenient and it is affordable. And then some sort of set of speakers, which I'm not really sure. It's like, what I want her to have, like a pair of Sonus Faber.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I would love that, but that's just not in the cards. So, maybe something on the used market. Maybe there's something out there. But, maybe those Kef make, really, really good sounding desktop speakers that don't cost an arm and a leg. So, yeah.
With the little clips to some of those, like RPs, right? The RP series. Sounds pretty nice. Yeah. And then when you think about it, you get something inexpensive like that. And it's kind of like cars today. They have all this incredible technology that never thought you'd have, and nowadays, she can, once it's hooked up to the internet, it really is a pathway, sort of like that original iPod, but to high-res music.
Yeah.
You don't have to be on Bluetooth. You could be right up hooked on Wi-Fi or an Ethernet, as long as the experience is good. And, probably on Spotify, maybe your daughter has Spotify or whatever it is. There's a ton of options for that. That's becoming ubiquitous, the Spotify Connect, the different, obviously I don't think she's like a candidate for like worrying about Tidal or any of this other stuff.
I have Tidal. Maybe I'll just upgrade to the family plan and just, hook her up.
Well, that's a good daddy.
Well, yeah. I mean, because that's how I roll. But
So I just think it's a matter of like how you can infiltrate like the best possible quality in like the great experience. That's really the Apple mantra.
true, but she doesn't have room for vinyl.
Oh,
You just walked into it.
you went there.
You just
Oh,
walk
boy.
into it. You throw me a softball, and
You have to
I'm
remember
gonna
though, like
swing it.
I'm not the vinyl villain. I have an origin story of trauma about vinyl. So
That
it's
is
more
true.
like I lost all my vinyl
I
in a
get it,
terrible
man.
tragedy. And so yes, like the Phantom of the Opera, like I got the acid in my face and now I'm just wearing the mask, a digital recreation of my face, and I am sitting there banging away on my organ, up in the country here. That's what it is. It's like I went to the dark side, man.
Right.
I've gone all digital. I'm just zeros and ones, baby.
I just find that when I'm on Tidal, when I'm listening to music, I'm also on Tidal looking for what I'm going to listen to next. And that kind of bothers me. That sort of defeats the purpose, I find, of listening to music,
Mm.
because with vinyl, you put the record on and it's more inconvenient to get up and stop the record after one track. It's more annoying. And then you go to a different and put on another album and just listen to one track, or to get up and skip a track. It's irritating to do that. And that's not how I want to listen. I want to listen to the whole record. That's why I have a limited amount of records. I've got about 200 records, and that's it. And if I buy a new record, well, guess what? There's no more room. So something has to go. So it becomes like, this like rotating library of things that I actually actively listen to. And so the temptation for me is, I really dig Tidal. The algorithm has me pegged. I've found a lot of really, really good artists, really, really great albums on it that I otherwise would not have found. But the listening experience for me is certainly less focused, more distracted, and the music just sort of lays out in the background until something gets my attention and gets me interested and excited.
I would say like that's the world we live in, but that was like, listening in the radio in the car, when radio used to be so dominant. That was always like your randomized playlist, right?
Yeah.
Just with like lots and lots of commercials and stuff.
Yeah.
But boy, you'd hear that beginning of like, another brick in the wall, whatever. You'd be like, yeah, like turn it up. Those little Delco speakers or whatever.
Mhm.
The only thing with vinyl is if someone's beginning, that's about like building a library of stuff. I think the gateway drug for me, in my opinion, is nowadays going to be going right through those
Sure.
where it's all at your fingertips. And then maybe she comes over or she's at a friend's place out in Chicago or doing something. And in other words, like, I think it'll reveal itself to her just like it got us.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I don't think there's a way we can engineer that kind of like love of the that level.
I'll try. I mean,
Yep.
I've got a cool, I've got a lot of room in my garage, see what I can craft up, maybe some sort of injectable.
The real secret sauce in all this, and what really I think hooks us in, is it when you hear great sound, you can't unhear it.
That's true.
So
That is very
that's
true.
really the gateway, is that sound.
Make sound great again. That's all I'm saying. Make sound great again.
Yes, please, somebody do it.
All right. Well, coming up, we are going to do the audio dumpster dive. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sound or Music. I'm David Jones.
And I'm Mick Jones.
How you doing, man? We're going to do what we call a audio dumpster dive. We're combing the used market for deals, for bargains, and something that, if we find something that gets our attention, we're going to let you know about it. So, yeah, starting off, Mick, what do you got?
Okay. My choice is the Octo Research DAC 8 stereo streaming that I found on US Audio Mart, asking $1,100. The retail price is between $1,500 and $1,600. I have this unit. It's just legendary. It's just
really?
a fantastic.
What is Octomart?
Octo Research.
Octo Research.
It's from Prague.
Okay.
Eastern Europe has an incredible audiophile thing going on out there. That's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
So Octo Research kind of like blew a lot of people's minds when they came out with this some years back. I know I was able to get one incredibly. I got one through sheer luck during COVID, which was so hard with all the supply chain and everything. And that just made them even scarcer and harder to get.
Yeah.
But I got my hands on one. It's just one of those perfect unit. It's super simple. It's got a lovely look and a great interface. And the streamer's a Raspberry Pi, which if you know anything about that, that's a whole other topic we could really cover. So that's kind of the streaming module in there. And it's just engineered perfectly. I mean, the specs are impeccable. They're unimpeachable. The performance is fantastic.
And it's a DAC.
Yeah, it's a DAC streamer preamp.
Is it a ladder DAC? Is it a Burr Brown? Or what do we know what's in there?
Yeah, so it uses Sabre DACs, which is pretty industry standard.
Right.
A lot of people tell you with the DAC, it's the chip. It's really about the implementation. And I've heard some Sabre chips that are just transcendent.
Yeah.
It sounded better at 16 and 44K than almost anything I've ever heard in high res or anything else like that. So I don't take anything as gospel, but I just am guided by my ears. And some of the more recent Sabres I have not liked at all. They've been like fingernails on a blackboard to me. They've been very shrill. They're kind of chasing these performance numbers, I feel like sometimes. I mean, just personally, I wonder if they're just chasing performance numbers just to get their like that Cyned or the THD puts in just everything into like in this like arms race of like purity or something. So the Octo Research has it's clean, but it's not sterile to me. It wasn't too clinical like some of the topping stuff I've heard, which I really haven't liked very much. And some of these other brands, again, chase numbers look good on paper, but to me, like next, in they come and out they go.
Right.
The Octo is a keeper. It's kind of a modern legend, so they don't come up very often, and that's why I wanted to highlight it for people.
Copy. Okay. Well, that's a good lead into my first dumpster dive. I managed to find a Prima Luna Evo 100 tube DAC on eBay that just sold for $1,700. And this is a DAC that goes for like $3,500, brand new. And this thing looked flawless and it was gorgeous. And I never wanted anything more in my life when I saw this thing. But no, because, the beef that I have with the sound of digital is the clarity is so sharp that it sounds to my ears kind of shrill and very kind of gritty and irritating. So when I see a product like the Prima Luna Evo 100 that has a tube output stage and the internal DAC is a Burr Brown, that to me says, okay, these guys are doing everything they can to take the edge off the music. The digital signal that's coming in, it's coming in hot, and they are doing everything they can to like step on its neck and say, no, you're going to sound, frankly, more analog, more musical, more like vinyl. To me, that's my hotspot. That scratches my itch. And, just reading about it. And of course, I went down the rabbit hole, looking at, different reviews and different videos about it. And everything that I'm seeing is just like, yes, if you find this thing on the market, it doesn't pop up a lot. These things do not, stick their heads out for very, very long. And to see one go for $1,700, that looked, I mean, there was like one scratch on it is unheard of. And, I just wish that I pulled the trigger on it. Of course, then there's the practical matter of where do I put it? How do I sneak it into the house? It's an incredible product from an incredible American company. It's beautiful to look at. And yeah, I mean, it like I said, it checks every box for a DAC that I have. So that's my number one dumpster dive for this week.
That's an awesome choice, and that really is an incredible price. I love finding these things out there, And I know Upscale Audio.
Oh yeah, sure.
Gentleman at Upscale Audio, I forget his name is Dave.
David.
I met him briefly at Expono one year, and I also heard the DAC. I heard that unit in play, but I can't say that I sat and properly auditioned it.
Okay.
So I was in a room with that, with
Yeah.
music playing, and everything sounded fantastic. But
Mhm.
it was, one of the 30 rooms I went to, and I
Yeah.
was working in a different room. So that really is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you got next?
All right, so now I'm actually going to go back again. I have a lot of sympathy for the beginners in this hobby, this passion, and I don't want to, ever try to lecture too much or
I love lecturing.
yeah. Well, my motto is take my advice. I'm not using it, so that's how I roll. But I wanted to give a shout out for a kind of a non-audiophile, but still I think wonderful, and I'll explain why. It's the Yamaha WXC 50 streamer and preamp. They also made a WXA, which has an amplifier, I think about 50 watts aside, but I only have the C, the streamer and preamp. And it came out in 2016, so it's
The WIC 50?
50.
Okay.
That's the one. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
It came out in around 2016,
Mhm.
and I got it not too long after that. I did get, I think, a factory refurb through probably Accessories for Less or something. They've been a great source for some of this stuff. I just want to
Mhm.
try,
Yeah.
buy and try and then maybe resell. But that's another one I've kept
Okay.
because, again, if form follow function. In functionality, there's beauty, right? Wasn't that Mies van der Rohe or one of those guys?
Yeah, one of those guys, Maurice van der Rohe,
Jerry, my next door neighbor, one of those guys.
Yeah,
Someone somewhere said something like that. No, but it's a simple little box. It is an absolute Swiss Army knife of.
Mhm.
It's got coax out. It's got a Toslink in. It's got analog in and out. It's got, I think, 2 DACs. I think there's one for the analog stage and for the DAC because there's like a converter. You can go like Toslink in and coax out. So it has like a digital out. There's a Sabre 9006, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, and a Burr Brown.
Oh,
And
wow.
I did a lot of side-by-side tests with that with my benchmark.
Yeah.
And with when I had the Krell Connect set up, and I did a lot of checking and A/Bing, just again, not scientific, just what did I notice anything? How was the sound?
Mhm.
And I thought it was flawless.
Wow.
It sounded absolutely good enough to hold its own.
Wow,
It could,
good for Yamaha.
yeah, absolutely. I think they really did a fantastic job. My only gripe, this would be to me a Hall of Famer, sort of like the Octo Research.
Yeah.
The only reason why it falls a tick or two short is the preamp. I wish they had just spent a little more time to refine it, because when you get up about halfway and over, it starts getting kind of shrill and shouty.
Okay.
The mid range kind of gets a edge to it, and it's like But if you keep it low enough, you have good enough amp, well matched. I used it again, really easy AirPlay. You can do it over your browser. It has like a very 90s looking like web browser control. It's like, I think there's a blink tag. I think something is like blinking at you or animated.
Pop-up ads.
Yeah, it's really like, I want to say it's a little bit like kind of old school, a little bit feeling, but it has been bulletproof.
Okay.
And that is what I appreciate. When I come home, or I came home, my son had 10 friends over and they're rocking Slow Dive and then Mingus and then this and then that. And they're just like bouncing around and playing all this different like cool music, and they're talking, they're cooking, and it's just because that simple little thing, again, AirPlayed right to it. I don't care that it's not quite the resolution or quite the highest, whatever transfer, always worked, always on. The music just instantly going. And I had a little cheap amp. I used it with several different amps, and then I just ended up with a little spare like placeholder amp.
Right.
But man, we used that, and I put it through my Riga RS5 speakers that I actually got from Upscale Audio many years ago, and have been fantastic. And it would just sound great. And again, the music was there when they needed it.
Yeah.
The music was right there. And I just think it's a great little utility box. It's older now. It's not got all the latest and greatest, but boy, that has served me so well, and it has been, like I say, it's just been bulletproof.
And how much is it new? It's like $450, right?
Yeah, $450, and I think the one I saw, this one is three something.
So you're looking at like 25% off. on the used market?
Yeah, like there's an eBay listing just currently today. They're not that hard to find.
Okay.
This is from it's probably coming from Tokyo,
Mm-hmm.
but it's free shipping,
Wow.
but it's $312.
Okay.
And I would, say again for the absolute beginner, maybe not, but someone who's had a little bit, or maybe even from a whim, or they need a few of the ins and outs. I would say it's more like it has the pre-out, has a sub out, it's got a remote trigger, it's got the aux. It also has a nice like rocker switches where you can like slider switch where you can like either put it on Bluetooth or Wi-Fi.
Okay.
It's the USB isn't like for USB and like music in, it's just more for like I think you can only use like a USB stick up to a certain size. I forget what it is. Ethernet. Yeah, the trigger in and out, a wired remote if you need it,
Mm-hmm.
Optical out,
So it sounds like a
out.
good like workhorse kind of device.
It is.
Yeah.
It's an absolute Swiss Army knife, and I love its look, I love its performance, and I really love its sound. Except that one little thing where the preamp just gets a little bit strident and shouty, and I'd have to turn it down. It would bug me a little bit, and that's the only flaw. It's like maybe wabi sabi. It's the flaw that is beautiful, but like it is such a great little device. So I just wanted to put a shout out for that.
Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds great. Score one for Yamaha.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. All right, Mick. So yeah, for my second pick, I managed to find, I think it was Facebook Marketplace, for $500, a Creek 5350 SE, which is a special edition integrated amp. Now, Creek is one of those companies that like, if you know, kind of thing.
Right.
And it's a wonderful amp from Creek in like the late 90s and into 2000s. Creek was making these integrated amps like the 4240, the 4330, these great little solid state amps. They were retailing for like $1,500, $1,500, $1,600.
Back then, that was decent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was all. Yeah, that's in my world, that's real money. But they sounded great. This guy Mike Creek was sort of like a mad scientist, and he built these things, and they're very low profile, solid state amps, and they were kind of Creek kind of introduced me to high end audio back in, I think it was like 93, 94. I auditioned a 4340 SE, and it knocked my socks off. It comes highly recommended from speaker manufacturers, specifically like Shahinian out on Long Island.
Oh yeah.
Who make my speakers.
Oh yeah.
They're close to the top of a very, very short list. To find one at $500, under maybe $400, is shocking.
Oh, that's amazing. That's an amazing find. And I was just looking because the Stereophile review, Robert J. Rena, was from March 2001.
Yes.
For the 5350 SE, and he's very complimentary. And just some of it is high current N channel only MOSFET power output stage driven by a P channel MOSFET phase splitter and double differential voltage amplifier with symmetrical Class A drivers.
Whatever the that means.
That just sounds so dope. Like I just want to
it does sound dope. That's why it's a great little machine. Yeah, it sounds great.
So obviously this is someone, like you said, a little bit of a mad genius kind of effect doing it. And I am ashamed to say I can't recall if I've listened to any Creaker. I'm very familiar with them by name and their reputation, but if I did, it was just in passing. It's I wish I could hear this right now, man.
Yeah, it's really dope. A friend of mine out west, he's got a 4320 or 4330 SE out there, also running on a pair of Shahinian Arcs, and he loves it. When you nail it, you nail it. And it shows that, you don't have to spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to get high quality sounding audio. You just have to find the right company. You have to find the right designer. You have to find the right guy. Creek fills that niche. And particularly these older designs, I say older, but 20 years old, 20, 25-year-old designs, they still hold up. And they're great. So yeah. If you see any of them running on eBay, is particularly the 4340 or specifically the 5350. SE, so the special edition, that just means that it's an edition that's special.
You're special.
Thank you,
David. You're special.
I would absolutely jump on it. Yeah, the Creek 5350 SE that I found for $500. That's
an amazing
that's
dumpster
killer.
dive find.
Yeah, man.
You got another one?
I do, just because I got really excited. Actually, I got one.
We could do this all day. You know,
I know.
We could just sit here and like, wait.
Yeah, no, I do have another one, and then I've got a a shout out, a mention. So I saw on eBay a pair of Magnapan SMG-A speakers for $600. And if you know anything about Magnapan, they're an American company based out of Minnesota, and they've been making these flat panel speakers for 30, 40 years now, and they are legendary. They sound amazing. They sound absolutely amazing. I did manage to hear a pair of Magnapans a couple of years ago, and I was just like floored. Did they have bass that I was looking for? No, they didn't. But I would say everything from like 150 hertz up was flawless and beautiful and rich and lifelike. The speakers are tall. Yes, they're dipolar. They're sort of thin. Yeah, they probably do take up a lot of space. But holy cow! Oh my goodness, were they absolutely delicious to listen to? And yeah, for $500, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I've heard Magapans at some shows, and it's a special experience. And yes, they are big, but they're flat.
Yeah.
So they're just more like screens almost, like maybe a few feet, 2 to 3 feet wide, maybe, and about 5 feet high or so. And then maybe only about 3-4 inches deep.
Yeah.
So they're not those big, like hulking speakers of old. They're not lugging around big, huge magnets around, the drivers. It's a different approach, and it's worked brilliantly for them. And they're legendary.
Yeah.
They're fantastic.
Yeah. So the Magnaplaner, saw them on eBay for $500. Yeah. Can you imagine, like, you buy these Maggies, you buy the Creek, and then you buy the Prima Luna, and out the door you're under $3,000, and you've got an absolutely
like a drop dead system.
Ridiculous system.
You forgot the streamer though.
Yeah.
Hey.
Sure.
There's no music.
I'll spend $250 to get a Wim Pro, a Wim Pro Plus, and hook that up. And as they say, Bob's your uncle. You're all in for like $3,000.
Yeah.
And you've got a system that will tear the roof off this dump.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. My special shout out is to Cambridge Audio. The DAC Magic 100 D to A converter.
Yes.
New is $250. I bought one on Facebook Marketplace for $75.
I actually have been thinking about picking one up just to keep it in my back pocket.
I couldn't say no. I couldn't say no.
That's still running Wolfson decks?
That is the Wolfson 24-bit DAC. Yep.
Very musical, lovely.
So
gorgeous.
It's so good. It's so good. I was happy with the Wim Pro Plus. I wasn't happy with the way my CD player sounded playing through the Wim. So, I hooked up the Toslink to it, played it down, and it sounded like really crispy. I was like, hey, oh boy, we got to do something about this. And of course, nothing that money couldn't take care of.
Right.
So, I started digging around, and I remember that you'd mentioned the DAC Magic 100 as being, a viable option, as being something that's like really good. And so, I took a look around.
Wonderful.
And then on Facebook, one popped up. This little gopher popped his head up, and I'm sitting there with my 22.
You dived right in the dumpster. You dumpstered it.
I jumped right in. I said, is this thing in good condition? They said, yeah, no problem. I'm like, is it clean? Yes. He said, I'm moving on. I just gotta, get rid of equipment. I was like, I will certainly buy that. And I bought it that night. like 2 days later it showed up. I hooked the thing up and it's flawless and it's great. You know,
It lives up to its rep. Like
does.
the
It
Wolfsons,
absolutely
and
does,
their
yeah.
implementation's really nice. Cambridge Audio is good. Give them a hand. They're a
Yeah,
good
I mean,
company.
the first thing I did was run the Toslink to it and listen to it, and yeah, it was definitely smoother. My gut didn't tighten up as much listening to it, and yeah, so special shout out to Cambridge.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Congratulations. Welcome to the family, DAC 100, little baby DAC 100 is good.
Yeah.
And I hope you enjoy your life here. And if not, he's just going to toss you in the trash. So, you better work. You better show up. You better bring that music in it.
Exactly. All right, coming up, we've got Would You Buy It? Talk to you soon.
Hey, David,
Yeah.
I got a question for you.
Okay, I've got an answer for you.
All right.
Might not be right, but
My
got an
question is,
Yep.
would you buy it?
answer. Okay.
And the item I'm thinking about, it's kind of a class of product, accessory.
All right.
And it is the speaker isolation foot or pad
Wow, you are really opening up a can of worms.
or waterbed or masseuse or...
Explain to me what exactly these are.
Okay, so, on the bottom of most speakers, you have some type of little rubber things that they don't just put the bare, speaker on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And what these are meant to do is replace those feet that come with your speaker and give a more rubberized, padded, isolated kind of experience so that vibrations, both from the speakers and the room together, don't end up affecting the sound of the speakers by like adding more vibrational movement in the wiggly manner of vibrations. It's all about vibrations.
Okay.
They're small, they're invisible, you can't see them.
Fair enough. I get the concept. Let me just jump on the web here. Let's see.
Let me ask you this. Do you have on your Shahanians right now, do you have isolation pads?
I have casters.
Oh, like wheels.
Wheels. Yes.
You wheel your
Yes.
speakers around.
I wheel my speakers around, not, but that's how they were designed. That's how they came.
People will gasp.
I understand that, but
will gasp.
yes,
at
but
that.
but you know what? I'm noodling the speakers. I have to move one of the speakers, the right one. I have to move it constantly in order to access my equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Because the equipment doesn't sit in the middle of between the speakers. It's off to the right, and so I have to like constantly. I'm constantly moving, and it's just far better if these things are on casters. People are constantly noodling with speaker position, closer to the wall, further away, toe in, toe out. And, if the speaker's on spikes, well, and plus these things, they weigh a lot. I think they're close to like 80 pounds or something like that. I mean, they're heavy. So I don't want to, blow out a disc just because I'm trying to get a little bit of more butter in my mid-range.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, they're on casters, and you know what? They sound great. I have no issue with it. So when you're talking about like vibration, I know that for my cartridge on my phonograph, my turntable, vibration is a killer.
Right.
It can absolutely be a killer. So I kind of understand isolating there.
Mm-hmm.
But for a speaker, I mean, isn't it kind of like, isn't the signal sort of like done once it gets to the speaker? That are we really talking about something that's going to make an audible difference?
Yeah, depending on the mass of the speaker, and
You lost me at mass.
yeah. You weren't showing up in physics class, were you? You were.
I was there, physically,
physically.
but intellectually and emotionally,
Yeah.
no, I checked out.
Well, anyway, I'm with you. Like, I'll give it a counter example. One time I did get like foam isolation pads under some speakers of my 5.1 system because they were both sitting. They were bookshelves, and they were sitting on this entertainment unit I was using at the time that had these open cavities where I could put like discs or books or CDs or whatever, and they resonated. Like, it became part of the sound.
Like rattled?
No, like the box, like if you have a wooden box and there's sound on top and it's vibrating, now that that's acting as like a passive radiator.
Fair enough. Okay.
So when I put those little guys up on like 1 inch of these little pads, these little like inexpensive monitor pads, I absolutely heard a really nice difference. But that was different. There wasn't the speakers.
Well, you were eliminating a problem.
Right. The actual resonance from the speaker was actually resonating in my furniture.
Okay.
So in that case, I was really isolating the furniture from the speaker.
Oh, okay.
But then the speaker on the floor, I have my Cantons on stands here. I wouldn't, I would feel no need. No need.
I'm jumping through the interweb here, and I see isolation feet, everything from $15 all the way up to $1,500, $2,000 isolation. I mean, I don't know if I'm convinced that it's such a problem that it requires a $2,000 or $1,500 solution.
Well, then you're clearly not an audiophile, David.
Well, obviously not then. But I mean, I don't live above, a dance hall or a disco or something like that. I guess the value proposition to me is if you feel that your speakers are vibrating and are causing other things to vibrate and that's annoying you, then by all means go for it. If you have the means,
then you must run out and get them because there's impurities.
I'm not going to disparage anybody for running out and spending their money however the hell they want. I'm just saying that I don't think that these will qualify as snake oil, but I just don't know if they're worth the trouble. I just don't. I just don't see the value proposition. I mean, like I say, my speakers are on casters, and I roll them around like a friggin' desk chair, and they sound great. Maybe this is something that I haven't run into, and that maybe there are parts of the country where just vibrates so much that you need to isolate from the floor. I just haven't run into it.
Well, and you're talking about the room, and that is so important. Like for me, in my use case, when I did find value in putting pads under my speakers, it was in a place where the furniture was clearly resonating.
Yeah.
So I solved that problem. In certain rooms, about over 20-something years ago, I got to go down to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, because I was a huge Southern Soul fan. And I met the Muscle Shoals rhythm section and actually the original Fame studio where they recorded all those Aretha and Don Covey and the Rolling Stones were down there.
Right.
In that legendary room. The guy bought it. It had turned into like a washer and dryer, like sales place or something. But in the back, the original control room and the board and everything was still sitting there.
Oh my God.
And this guy was refurbishing it back to the way it was. So I got to actually have a tour alone in this legendary room and look it up if you don't know, like the Fame studio in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. It's a legend, and I got to go in there. But the floor, his feeling was that the floor was also a little bit spongy in the main room.
Okay,
not like you were going to fall through, but it was a big old wooden floor. It was an older building, and he felt that the sound in there, part of that was that resonance was actually what helped cohere kind of the sound altogether, and really just gave it that extra like punch.
Oh, okay.
So there, again, coming from an audio engineering standpoint, sometimes we'd put a microphone in a box to get an effect, or we do something else, or we put the guitar amp in the bathroom to get the proper reverb effect. You're kind of used to like any port in a storm, let's just get the sound we're looking for.
Right.
So there are times when those happy accidents happen, but for just pure reproduction purposes, no. Like I would say if your floor is really resonating or flopping, or you feel like when you walk, it's like boom, 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 and you're playing loud music. Yeah, I do believe the floor could then end up being an unwanted like radiator, a passive radiator for sound, which could affect your listening.
So would you buy it?
I would be very careful. I would not just automatically go out and buy it. I would look, and if I had a need, if I had a problem, I would. Then I would. And I do that by taking measurements. I listen to the system. I run a bunch of measurements. If something looks really funky down in the low end, or it could be reflections, it could be whatever it is, then I start thinking about it. But you got to make sure, like, you don't just buy something as a panacea. That's my advice. It's not just going to automatically make your system sound better.
No, it won't. It's a no for me, dog.
Yeah.
It's a no for me. Do I think they work? I'm sure that they work in a lab, but I don't think that the effect is going to be so profound.
That what the vibration, whatever they're stopping, is not actually impacting the sound in any way in most
I don't
cases.
think so. And the same people who would, be aghast and clutch their pearls when they find out that my speakers are actually on roller-on casters, I don't think that those people would hear a difference either. Can it be measured? Maybe, but can it be heard?
Right.
I doubt it. Can it be felt? I don't know. And sure, okay, fine. If they're $20, like, yeah, all right. But once you start like talking about real money, like $1,500, $2,000 for friggin' isolation fees, which are, an answer to a question that nobody's asking, it's a no for me, dog.
Okay. I keep a little open mind because I feel like
See, I don't.
oh, oh boy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's all right. I think we've put the isolation pads in their place, which is not under our speakers, but probably back in the drawer for now.
But for now. And again, if it's a real problem, if it's a real issue, then by all means, go for it.
Well, I just remembered I have a confession to make. I have a Sue subwoofer, HSU, the wonderful Sue sub. It's deep, it's gnarly, it's powerful. It rocks me to my soul. I bought some pads that are for like washing machines.
Okay.
Anti-vibration pads. That's really what you're talking about.
That's what we're talking
about.
And
I put that on there because, again, that thing is such a beast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be buried inside my Krell amp, inside my Sue subwoofer. That's like the
sort,
order of operations.
Sort of a turducken.
Yes. Yes. I'm going to be the audio turducken.
A Krell shoe.
That's me. And
your coffin's going to be the size of a Mack truck.
That's right. And so I did that because, again, it's in a little bit of a smaller room, and it is so powerful and is so commanding. Even though I have it dialed in really nicely, it's still like when you get those LFE, that low end on some like, Pacific Rim or whatever, it's just going to like rattle the windows no matter what. And, that it definitely helped a little bit, but it stopped the floor from being an extra like resonant passive kind of radiator, extra driver, pumping, giving extra sound, which does happen if it's powerful enough. So again, I'm on the fence. You're a no.
It's a no, but it's not a hard no. I mean, I could probably be convinced if there was a situation like you have where your subwoofer is, rattling the furniture and, shaking the rafters. And if your solution is simple and affordable, and it stops doing it, well then great. Well then wonderful.
It did.
But how much did you spend on
like $15 or
yeah,
something?
That's what I'm talking.
And I put them in, but here's the thing. So it did stop the rattling, it did stop the vibration, it did stop like the bleeding ears. So I just turned it up louder.
Well, sure. Just turn it up, and you know what? If you can make the world around you quieter and make your music louder, I think that's a winning combination.
Amen to that.
Yeah, probably not the most emotionally healthy thing to do, but just simply drown out your problems in music.
There are worse ways to do it.
There are
worse ways.
Absolutely are. So that does it. Let's play the rollout. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye. That wraps up this episode of The Sound or Music. Thanks for tuning in and indulging us. Remember, it's all about enjoying sound that moves you.
If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and share with your fellow audiophiles. Until next time, keep your ears open and clean your damn records.